combination of two committees is really interesting.
Yeah, I can
Coming
imagine.
right on the heels of,
Yeah, I just, yeah.
You're saying you're bored.
yeah.
You were, not anymore.
It was more, I was wondering if you had a return to office that.
I mean, you brought down.
In order to get TSS
Okay.
headquarters.
Say a lot.
Oh,
You know Mike Sloan, his roller? Big tennis.
I know, Mike.
Yes.
yeah, we can always plug it behind us if we need.
Yes, they didn't.
Yes, yeah, he used to be.
So that-
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they're all pickleball out too.
I don't know.
Yeah, not yet. It's for the old guys.
So it is 6 o'clock. It is 6 o'clock. I know we have a few members that are going to not be in attendance tonight. I know, Phil Scher is here. Vanessa Pantanen will not be here this evening, and either will Pascal Crosley. At least I don't believe we've heard from anyone else who will not be here this evening.
Pascal.
Yeah. Vanessa,
Vanessa.
and Laura is virtual.
Laura is virtual and Tim is here for Dan.
Correct, yes,
So excited.
yes, yes.
Canadian's out too, right?
Xavier, yes.
Zadian's out, okay. So, Chair, whenever you're ready to begin, we are
Here we
ready.
go.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Welcome, everybody, meeting number 16. Yeah, April 30th. And I'm going to call to order. I make sure we do have a quorum, and I know we do. So we'll move past that. Review and approve the agenda, which is in front of us right here. We're just going to be continuing our motions and our discussion. I'll get into that in a little more detail in a minute, but I want to make sure that we have a motion and a second on the agenda. Motion to approve,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all approve, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then secondly, just a review and approval of the minutes that are now published online from our last meeting. And again, we just need motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
So we're going to go into the continuation of our motions and discussion therein. The hope tonight is that we can go back to the kind of the 543 issues and documents you're talking about. We are going to do the housing affordability, hopefully tonight, and the multimodal tonight. And I know that Jen Mallow has presentation on the issue of LRC and SRC, and hopefully we can knock all those off, because the next meeting, the objective would be to review the presentation that Linda's team will be putting together for the public hearing, which is a hard date that we have. And if you can knock these off, we'll be reviewing that presentation and preparing for the public hearing.
Correct. So if I may, so the public hearing, I know we have our normal 7 o'clock start time. We did move the public hearing up an hour to 6 p.m. So it's a little bit different time frame. So 6 p.m. on May 20th, that will be here in the George Howard Building in the Banneker room. So where the budget hearings are taking place, so right across the hall. So that is posted. It is being advertised. It'll be in the Ball Bulletin. It's been out. I see that HCCA also has put it out. So the word is out that you all are having this public hearing. What I have been doing to date is posting all of the motions in a concise location underneath the public hearing posting. So that way everyone can see where you as a committee have been going thus far. But I want to have the presentation of where you all end up. And that will also be part of what we present at the public hearing on May 20th. So we will be reviewing that. And that'll be the precursor to obviously the report that we'll be working on over the summer. So we need to get to that point to have something to have everyone here and give testimony on for the public hearing on the 20th.
else, anybody? Then I'm gonna turn it over to Linda and Jeff. They've been
Sure.
doing a lot of work on the whole structure of the UPP and what Montgomery's done and what other people have done, and I'll let you run with it.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. So Jeff and I were talking, and so we talking to Montgomery County, and so Jeff is going to share a spreadsheet with you all and go over the Montgomery County utilization premium payment discussion. And we have an interactive spreadsheet, so we can begin to formulate some motions based on that interactive spreadsheet. I mean, as you all know, these are recommendations to county council and how they'll move forward with, wanting to change county code as far as APFO goes. I know there was some discussion on the 4-5-3 ratios. And, that seemed that was very well rooted in, elementary is 5 years, middle school is 3, and high school are 4 years. And so that wasn't arbitrary at all. Now, I know one could argue kindergarten as a 6th year and now pre-K as a 7th year in that, but that formula seemed to work well for them. But the percentages in the tiers, those are arbitrary numbers, admittedly so, from Montgomery County. Those numbers worked well for them. So what we thought we would do tonight is Jeff Berna has a spreadsheet. And we're going to kind of in real time talk about what numbers, we think would work well as those percentages for the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 would work well for Howard County. Again, I think as we move forward with a motion to utilize this utilization premium payment, I think it's always nice if we want to give a percentage, but I think the idea could be just to say we'd like to move, we would request or recommend that county council move forward with this, because at the end of the day, a fiscal note would need to be done for the county to see what type of payment structure would work best for Howard County. And that's something that I think really goes beyond the scope of this committee for something that fine of detail. I think it's going to call for something a little bit larger and a little bit larger of a study to happen to see really what the ideal percentages would work out. So with that, though, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to
Okay,
Jeff
yeah.
for the explanation. We can talk about what some numbers would look like.
So I put together a brief PowerPoint first to kind of give an overview of the UPP and everything the groups discussed. And then I guess if there's a desire,
Yeah.
we can go into the spreadsheet as well. So these is this showing? Okay. Okay. So this is just a quick recap of all one-time fees collected by new residential development now in Howard County to put things in perspective. And so a one-time fee again is it's a one-time tax, like a transfer tax that's collected at time of transfer. So that would be new construction when a new home is built, they pay a transfer tax. And also when a existing home is resold, they pay a transfer tax. And that's this first set right here. And right now the transfer tax rate is set at 1.25%. So it's based 1.25% of the sale of the value of the house. And then it's divided up into these different budget pots or pools. And the money actually goes into each of these pools for these purposes. The school land construction gets 0.3125. This was increased recently. It had been 1%. I think a couple of years ago it was increased to 1.25%. So this is just to show the single family detached, attached, and rental apartment. Transfer tax is based on property values. And so this is an average property value. So of course the transfer tax is going to change depending on what the actual house value is. But I took averages of all of, it looks like average property values based on sales data for homes built between 2020 and 2023. So basically relatively new homes built. This is that, this seems like a lot, this 1.1 million, right? But it is the countywide average, believe it or not, and it includes the West. So you would definitely want to refine that depending on where the home is built. But for example, in Wellington Farms, I know those single family detached homes are selling for over $1 million right now. And they're relatively high density, single family detached lots. They're not like big lots in the Northwest. So the homes, this is the average rate, believe it or not, of property values for single family detached homes in Howard County. Single family attached or townhomes averages about 658, and rental apartments based on rental values and cap rates to determine the valuation is they're worth about $315,000. And so the transfer tax collected for each of these would amount to 14,900 for SFDs, 8,200 for townhouses, and 3,900 for rental apartments. So that's transfer tax. And then the one-time fees, and this is only for new construction, because it's based in square foot charge. And so there's the road excise tax at $1.90 a square foot, the school surcharge, and so I'm gonna, it's highlighted in red because this is what we're focusing on, obviously. So you'll see this transfer in the future slides. $8.15 a square foot. And the recordation tax is $250 per $500 worth of sales value. So based on the average square foot, now this is based on actual data that's collected by our departments of inspection permits and licensing, and the average size of a house, newly built house in Howard County. And when they look at the square footage, they look at unfinished basements and garages. So it seems high because that's what they base it on. So if you multiply these rates by square footage, you end up with these school surcharge rates of about $45,000 for an average single-family detached home, $20,000 for a townhouse, and $10,000 for a rental apartment. And the reason it's important to point these out because we need to compare that to Montgomery County, because school surcharge is not an impact fee or impact tax as they call it. It's different. So, and I'll show that. I'll kind of show that in a minute. And then if there's a fee in lieu charge for single-family detached homes, there's a requirement to build 10%, 15% moderate income housing units for pretty much all developments in Howard County for all zoning categories. Typically, that's not affordable for single-family detached, so they pay a fee in lieu. And this is the current fee in lieu charge. So this is what per house would pay. So a one-time fees for a new single-family detached is close to $100,000 on average currently in Howard County. $36,000 for townhouses and $18,000 for rental apartments. So this just kind of puts things in perspective of where things are. This has been discussed in the committee. I think it's important to kind of summarize it and show where it's at.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do you have like rental apartment, but not like for sale? Condos?
Yeah,
There's
so-
not that many of them or what?
Well, so we could include that. I didn't include it to kind of make it simple. Most new multifamily is rental these days, so that's why. But we do have similar statistics for condos. The size for a condo is about the same size as the rental on average. The valuation would be different.
Thank you.
The rental apartments are based on, they're valued on cash flow, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to.
Yeah, because they're considered commercial.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so it's based on cash flow. So
And what's the relative distribution in multifamily between for sale and for rent?
I really think it's probably like 70 rent and 30 condos,
So.
something like that. But what's being built now is probably mostly rental.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but most, because I think the condo market is having issues, market perspective, I think. Yes.
Thanks. The school surcharge fee of $8.15,
Mhm.
that has recently been adjusted for inflation, is that right?
So I actually went to the county council website and you can see these little footnotes, like number 2 here. Road excise tax. Oh, I might have messed up the footnotes here.
It's the,
Well, so number 3, so the fee in lieu, so I think I messed up the references because I changed things. So basically, the road excise tax is going to increase to $1.92 based on inflation. I couldn't find the school surcharge, what it's going to be in July. There wasn't a bill submitted for that yet. Maybe they're trying to figure, but it will increase with inflation.
Yeah, it's like I know when I looked it up in the code, it was
Yeah, you're right.
$7.50 a square foot,
Yeah.
and now you have $8.15, and I
Right.
think the delta is because since it was $7.50
Right.
for FY 25,
Exactly.
it was adjusted upwards
Right.
to $8.15 because of inflation.
Exactly.
Just
There's also
from that understanding.
It's inflation. There's also a 3-year phase in, but I don't remember when that started. So it had been $1, and then it went up to
Yeah.
$7.50, but it was phased over 3 years, but now it's adjusted for inflation. So starting July, it'll be about 3% higher than the 8.50.
The last several years, they've been increased bills for the upgrading of it, so it's very hard to know just that.
You mean historical, like the information, yeah. Well, I do know that it's the last few years, it has increased by inflation, whatever that rate is.
Yeah, we can start making it public.
Yeah, okay, we can certainly find that out, yeah.
Is it indexed to inflation?
inflation?
It's indexed.
Or is it- Okay.
It's indexed.
That particular thing.
Yeah,
Okay, is it, and it's CPIU?
I think it might,
Does,
I don't.
the
I don't
public
know.
works projects have increased much faster than inflation.
Right, that was an
Last
adjustment, like a one-time
15, 20 years.
adjustment, I think, yeah. Yeah. But this is tied to inflation. So the 815, you could presume it'll go up by about 3% starting in July 2025.
It was passed in, I think it was December of 19 and the rate was immediately moved to 475 through 2020, 650 for 2021 and 750 thereafter, but
Yeah.
indexed.
And then
Mhm.
index, that's why it's 815, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that probably was presented because that's the base information, yeah. So. So that's kind of the situation in Howard County and, so this is Montgomery County impact fees currently. So they do a 2-year cycle. So this was adopted in July 2023 and expires in June 2025. So I don't know what the next set will be at this point, but we can probably find that out relatively soon. They have 2 areas, and just I want to kind of switch to this other slide to show what they mean by infill impact areas and turnover impact areas. So their turnover impact areas are this kind of the brown area, and the infill impact areas are really the areas that are slated for redevelopment in Montgomery County next to transit stations and major highways. If you want to compare that to Howard County, it would be something like this. We have our activity centers, which are the higher density areas like Gateway along the Route 1 corridor and the transit centers. And then
Those are impact,
those are our impact.
impact
Yeah, yeah,
areas, yeah.
right. And then the other character areas would be where there's some development, but most of it's just retail.
Turnover, yeah.
Turnover. So we don't call it that, but that's similar to what we would have in our.
So the dark blue and the light green,
Yeah,
for sure,
exactly,
yeah.
yeah. So I just point that out because the way they structure it, it's not meaning that we have to structure it the same way, but they have the structure in the 2 areas. And they actually have impact fee rates in each of the different areas. Because, so the difference between impacts, they call it taxes. And I asked why that was. I don't know for sure. I think it's a legal situation between an impact tax and an impact fee. They calculate it every 2 years based on the actual estimated impact. So they take the yield of students per house multiplied by the cost per seat. So they have a cost to build a new school, and they know how many seats are in that school. So you divide it by the number of seats. So you have an average cost per new seats to build a new school. They take that cost per seat multiplied by the number of students or number of seats in a typical single-family attached and apartments. And you can see there's a big difference. So these, because of the yield rates are so low in multifamily high-rise, which we showed before, their impact fees are relatively small for multifamily and relatively large for SFDs and townhouses. And actually, given the yields are somewhat similar in SFDs and townhomes, according to Montgomery County statistics, they're somewhat similar. And the other kind of thing you can notice is that they're lower in the impact areas, infill impact areas where there's redevelopment. That's where you're going to have the high rise. Compared to the turnover impact areas, the yields are higher, so that the fees are a little higher. So that's just the way they do it. And if you compare that to Howard County, so just kind of wanted to show you, this is the countywide school surcharge on average. Again, this is actually every single house, no matter what. For Howard County, it would be based on the size of the house. But if you think of the average, this is kind of what's happening here in Howard County. And here's the difference.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
That top for the MoCo, is that some kind of average? Because some charts that we've seen in the past, and I know it varies wildly,
Yeah.
but like a lot of the areas, most of the areas are in the 20,000s, like you're saying, but then there's areas that go up to 56,000.
So, well, all I know that this is effective now, and this is all they have. This is all that's in effect. So they have these fees for these 2 areas currently in effect in Montgomery County. It could have been different in the past, for sure.
So you said,
This is the base.
This is the
number.
base.
This is not with the
No, I
UPP.
Yeah,
I'm
UPP will
thinking
be-
if that's.
that'll be coming up.
no, it's not. I have a chart that ends through 24 and this one says 23 to 25. So I'm not sure how that relates, but I'm just saying that the chart I have that has for fiscal year 24, there's a big range, but the highest is 56,000.
Yeah. You gotta be really careful. 'Cause
Yeah.
I did a search on their website
Mhm.
and I found a memo. See this memo right there? This came up, but it, was different results because it was 2 months earlier.
Mhm.
So this is 2 months later. When I talked to staff, they verified that this is what's currently in effect right now.
I guess my question is, have they gone down versus
I think they have
what kind
gone
of
down.
research we're
I
doing?
think they have gone down
Yeah.
because the previous one was higher.
Right.
So
Okay.
that compared to the previous 2 years, it probably has gone down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And why that might be because the yield has gone down.
Is there another difference here, though? So they're collecting these impact taxes on all resales, whether it, right, this is
No,
not
just
just,
new construction.
this is only new
Only
construction.
construction. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So important thing for this, I think, to point out is that if the county, if there was going to be a recommendation to stick to the surcharge, you can see that there's some inequity based on yield rates, right? It's important to keep in mind that the surcharge, which is based on just square footage, there's not a direct nexus to the school impact of that charge, as opposed to actual calculating impact taxes based on cost per seat, students per seat. So for example, you could argue in Howard County, the multifamily high-rise is paying too much for their impact currently in Howard County.
And then conversely, then another one is paying too little.
Right, yes. It could be, so SFAs, for example. So SFAs, we saw that in Montgomery County, they're pretty close to the SFDs because the yields are similar between townhomes and single-family detached. Very likely because in many cases, it's only townhomes are being built, so families are moving into townhomes. Townhomes have 3 bedrooms, sometimes 4 bedrooms. So the yields might be similar. However, in Howard County, there's a big difference. And townhomes are underpaying, according to that argument, if you compare it to Montgomery County. 9,000 less than what their actual impact. So this is just to say that it could be that there could be a recommendation of this committee that the county move away from the surcharge concept and do an impact tax concept, impact fee concept. If there's a desire for a little more equity and a direct nexus, something to think about. One reason why you see this difference, this is from the pupil yield analysis that was presented back a few months ago. You can see the difference. So the multifamily high-rise, we show that the yields of these units, which have a lot of 1 bedrooms and studios, not very many 2 bedrooms, the student yields, this is number of students per average unit, is 0.16 or 0.17 compared to even a multifamily low-rise, which is like a garden apartment. This is about half of that. And it's much less than an SFD and SFA in Howard County. So it's just something to consider, I think, moving forward.
Were the yields comparable between the counties?
That I don't know because I didn't see their yields. Yeah, I think they're,
Jeff, if you don't mind, I've researched that one before.
okay, yeah.
And Montgomery County in general, up until recently, had approximately 20% less yield per household, which is a net. They need 20% less resources per household. So they have lower fee requirements, or mitigation fee requirements to meet the same result as Howard County.
Has that changed? Is it evolving?
The yield per household on average across the whole county has declined slightly over time. But we're also seeing a lot of private schools and things of that nature, homeschooling, occupying that space. Both Here nationally, it's a national trend.
No, that I understand, but I just meant,
The per pupil yield per household has gone down in Howard County, but not significantly.
right, but there's really no,
4.48.
there's no private school option in Howard County. There's basically one, and then some.
You can drive across the border. too.
No, I understand. I mean, there's a lot of people that do
Yes.
drive to McDonough and, yeah, others, but.
Yeah, the exact amount is 1.5 currently.
Average.
In Milcom. Average.
Now, in Montgomery County,
I think it's Howard County, right? Howard County is 0.44.
Oh, Howard County.
Montgomery County was about 0.40
okay.
when we were running almost 0.50. So in general, they were almost 20%
It takes.
less children.
So, you know, if Howard County were to impact taxes, it would be different than Montgomery County, right? We can't.
Yeah, for that reason alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Which by its very nature, and I apologize, justifies why we would probably have the most expensive rate in the state because we have the
Higher yield.
highest yield per household of students.
it could be, the question is, how would it compare against our current transfer tax rate or our current school surcharge rate?
I just, real quick, just want to say that, they probably have a lot less backed up deficiency of mitigating capacity and capital needs because their fees were extremely higher than ours for decades.
Mhm.
And ours were extremely lower than they are now for a really long time. They're kind of recently implemented. So it is rough. It's really hard to figure out how to compare the two because you're comparing current situations, but you also kind of know that we've got a backlog of trying to catch up with building schools and having the money to expand things that they don't issue as much as we do.
The thing is though, that school surcharge, it's a means of generating revenue, but it's a means of providing the county the revenue to allocate to the schools. As opposed to the county could make decisions to allocate money to the schools irrespective of surcharge. So what I don't know is what was Howard County doing prior to the increase in the surcharge in 19 and 20 when it really ratcheted up? And I don't know the answer to that. But it was just a means of generating a dedicated pot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I still think the surcharge, you know, relative to the school capital budget is relatively small, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a way to add additional money.
I'm sorry, just to, the surcharge is based on per square foot development
In Howard, yes.
in Howard, and the impact fees that you're describing are based upon the student cost per
Per seat, yeah.
Yield and cost per seat.
Yeah. And, you know, and generally, the concept is, you know, the school surcharge for Howard County, apartments pay the least, and then townhomes and single family, which sort of makes sense in the terms of size, bedroom. But there is, if you look at yields and there is not the same direct nexus as impact taxes and impact fees. So this is the UPP. I crossed out that middle part because I think the committee's decided not to pick that up. Jeremy did a great job presenting this last time. So this is just, this is a reminder of what that is. You know, Linda mentioned these percentages and, you know, she indicated, so I called the school staff just to get a further understanding of these three things. One, you know, what was this based on? What was this based on? The fees, and what was this? There's a third thing. Let's see. Yeah. So how were the tiers created? And they basically said nothing specific. According to the staff, they were proposed and accepted. So they just thought that 40%, 80%, 120 was a reasonable premium. At least according to the people that I spoke with. I didn't follow the whole debate, obviously. So I just found it interesting because it seems pretty specific, but as far as the utilization rates, this is, what was discussed in the, so the 105% is tier one. That's when a project kicks into tier one if it's 105% capacity, kicks into tier two with 120% of capacity utilization, and kicks into tier three if it's 135% capacity utilization. Again, the question, why were these numbers picked? And basically there was some history in Montgomery County of these rates, and this is explained here. They said that the 105 was based on a previous regulation that they had a previous premium payment at that capacity. The 120 was based on, there had been at a time a moratorium placed in development in Montgomery County. That was when it was at 120%. So they chose that for tier two. So, and the 135% was a historic value representing extreme overcrowding that was occurring. So these are kind of known percentages historically, and that's why they're chosen. And then the UPP percentages was the 5-4-3 ratio, as talked about before. And this was mentioned before. It's really ES, elementary school is really not 5, it's 6, because it's K through 5. But the staff said it's still a 5-4-3 ratio if you look at the relative enrollments in elementary schools versus middle schools versus high schools. And that's how they came up with that. And this is their adopted UPPs. So this is in addition to what the base rate is. And it's very complicated because they have the 2 turnover areas and they have the 4 unit types. And you can see how they calculate that every year. This is like their adopted fee schedule.
It's just a calculation, though.
It's
doing
calculation
the math here.
based on
Just doing the math of what the.
Exactly. Yeah.
Their fee.
Yeah. So really quickly, I did for Howard County based on the surcharge rate. So basically using the surcharge rate and then tying this, for example, single family detached, if it was in the tier 1, it would be 16.66%. So 16.66% of the $45,000.
Which is based on the.
Yeah. And that's just, again, math calculation. And this is what it would be if we based on the school surcharge for each of the tiers. So, worst case scenario, it looks like a single family detached house in tier 3 would be paying $68,000 total fee, which includes a surcharge of 50% plus the base fee.
Can I ask you, what do you mean when you say based on the surcharge? That are you taking a differential and lowering?
Yeah. So it's basically this number, these numbers here. So here's the base surcharge based on the square footage of an average
That's
house.
the average square footage
average.
of 5,300 for the last 3 years times the 815.
Yeah. And then you apply the surcharge to that number to get the additional numbers.
So I'm sorry, just to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
Are you taking the fact that HOCO has a higher surcharge than MOCO, taking some differential percentage there, and then decreasing the UPP of MOCO?
No. So basically, this is taken off of the discussion at the last APRA review committee meeting, passing the motion that there was a recommendation to follow Montgomery County's model based on the current Howard County surcharge. So this is just an estimate of what these fees would be using that methodology. So an average size new single family detached house built in Howard County times $8.15 is $45,000.
What's the average size you're using there?
It's over 5,000 square feet.
Over 5,000.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a really large house.
And that's the average.
That's the average.
That comes directly, and so it includes unfinished basements and garages. They call it livable living space. So that comes from the database of our inspections department that collects the fees. So it's,
But in fairness, a house of that size is not a new build in the middle of Columbia.
Right.
A house of that size is a new build in Western Howard County. And there aren't any schools over capacity in Western Howard County, so
Right.
the surcharge doesn't really apply because you're not getting over 105 schools in the West.
Would it have been different if you used the mean instead of the average?
Well, I used I think, the median.
Median.
Yeah. It could, yeah, the numbers can change in many ways, right? This is just a way to demonstrate. I'm not saying that this is what, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, it's trying to, the concept. The
Like
concept.
our general plan is calling most of the new development in Howard County is going to be multifamily.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, like getting lost in what a single family detached is gonna be.
Yeah.
is-
Correct.
So better, I should probably use an example then of,
The apartment is still large.
so the countywide school surcharge is $10,000 per new apartment. And then applying the UPP to that for a new apartment would be an additional 6,000, I'm sorry, additional 1,300. So you add that to the 10,000, you get the 11,700.
And that's assuming that only
One of them.
the high school is.
Yes.
Yes.
So it would
Right.
keep stacking.
Stacking if all three are.
And in Montgomery County, they only had a few schools. They didn't have very many schools these days that this
Mhm.
applies to.
Yeah.
So in Howard County, the same situation, this wouldn't apply everywhere. It would just be a few schools, and it could be just the elementary. All right, exactly, yeah. And we do have the spreadsheet if we want to change the numbers, but that can get into a lot of, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeff, do you have any more?
I'm done. Yeah, so this, I think is just discussion, yeah.
You guys will humor me. We ended the last meeting with a discussion about UPP and solving for X. So we solved for X. Keep in mind, some of these are based on point in time numbers, some of these are based on averages. Don't sweat the numbers. What you see at the top of this are the various grades and how many students are enrolled as of April seat count in the school system. And it jives. Roughly 18,000 are in high school, 13,000 are in middle, 20,000 are in elementary, pre-K tapers down to almost zero. And that's why you have one. So I would divide by zero error. If you look at the weighted measurements and keep sliding that over to the right, you can see that a per seat cost. So how that relationship between the elementary, middle, and high and their actually map out. Because if you just did it off the cuff, 40% would go to middle, 20%, 60% to high. Let's go down to, these are the important numbers you calculate what you're getting out of the school surcharge. One is the total cost per seat. That was looked at in capital projects that have been done recently. Guilford High is a great example. That's all packaged in one. We didn't have a good middle school example, so that's an addition minus an addition capacity project proportionate to the amount of seats that were added. So we are charging $1 million a seat to addition project. And there was another one.
But there's like no land acquisition in that or anything
Well,
else,
there
right?
is land acquisition, but land acquisition for all practical purposes is separate from this because it's handled through the transfer tax, independent of the school surcharge fee. And if the transfer tax is adequate, it should be a net zero loss on it. We also have things like Guilford Park where you have a site capable of 3 schools. Whether or not we do 3 schools is yet to be determined, but the land cost per seat per student would obviously be different depending on decision points. So for the purposes of this, think transfer tax is your land acquisition cost, and that's not what we're discussing here. Then you got your cost per seat. This jumped. I've calculated this before multiple years for the council, and it's been roughly about, comes down to about 30,000 per housing unit per seat per kid. And it's jumped up to roughly 50,000 per unit. And I know that's astronomical, that's the current rates go based on those numbers.
And then just a quick observation, that makes sense because if Montgomery County's impact fees is about 25,000, I think it was. And that yield is if there's a half a student per house on average.
Like 4 or
And they're
5.
probably
Yeah.
full of points in Montgomery.
Then it's
As of a few days ago, that's what we're writing at.
25,000.
This is just total housing unit, this is not divided by attached.
It is not, and actually our school surcharge fee is not broken down into unit type, it's square foot. And let's be fair about this.
Oh, you're assuming.
There's no apartment out there that's 5 square feet and has 0.00001 kids. And there's no McMansion out there that is 10,000 square feet and has 24 kids because it has 20. That's that. At the extremes of the curve,
It doesn't make sense.
it doesn't make sense, but in the middle, as far as county average, with progressiveness by doing less square feet, less of a charge, this is what it works out to. And, the 5-year running average of how many units we're generating right now is 1,058. That's off the Baltimore Metropolitan Council reports that we got. We're closer to 800 actual now, but that's beside. We're looking at big stuff. What we calculate is the average one-time collection per housing unit should be as high as $50,000 to pay the capital costs. Currently, what we're collecting based on the school surcharges on the report that I provided to all of you is $19,413.64 per housing unit. We're running at a deficit of 31,000.
Excuse me really quick, may I interrupt, Brent? I don't know if Laura has this information or knows what we're talking about, because this was handed out in a paper format, and did you
It
send,
was sent to you on your.
sent to me, but not to other members, or did it go to
No,
other
I didn't send
members?
it to all the members.
You did?
I did not.
You did not, okay, because we
I
didn't receive this
I
till
didn't
late.
want to go outside.
Sure, yeah, we didn't send it till 4:30 today, so I did not send it to anyone. So I just want to make sure Laura has it. So I want to send it to her. So, so she knows what we're talking about. So Laura, just so you know, Brent's talking about a sheet that he passed out that was sent to us at 4:30 today. I had not had time to review my email since that time and the start of now's meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and send it to you, Laura, just so you know, as a point of reference, what he's speaking about.
Yeah, I'm getting the gist of it, even though I'm not
Okay, but I
looking
just
at
sent
it.
it to
I'm
you so
getting
you
the
would
gist
have
of
it,
it.
Laura.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to make sure that she had it in all fairness.
We're coming out roughly 61% of what we need in our current school surcharge fees to meet the capital needs at our current rates and averages. If we were to apply this to the UPP model, with the current school surcharge, if you were to jump into tier 3 where you're getting 120% premium, that would generate a $42,000 revenue, one-time revenue for the school system. Likewise, at the other end, if you did a 40% premium, you would get a $27,179 revenue at today's rates. However, if you compare it with the actual cost of expanding capacity on a per seat level, tier 3 still comes up $8,000 short. Tier 2 comes up $15,000 short. Tier 1 comes up $23,700 short. So with today's school surcharge, unless it is adjusted to more accurately reflect the actual cost of building a seat in the school system, your break even to make UPPs work is to have 163 or 164% premium. And that is break even. That is just meeting the actual cost to provide a seat for the kids generated on a per square foot average basis. So what can we glean from this? This is the solve for X. Right now, you're discussing percentage rates on the food. But this tells you what the net result.
So, I get it, and I think it's actually helpful. It's a good starting point. A couple of thoughts though. If you ask Laura, and I think she said it before, the average hold of a new home purchase is 11 years. The
the bonding to actually build the new school runs for 20 years and the asset itself survives for 60 or 50. So are you thinking that each of these new homes should pay for 100% of the new seat or their share, meaning their
This is
10% of, meaning their 10 years of this, of the asset?
It is not prorated by the asset. Most of the school expenses are not prorated. It is not recommended that we bond things that have a one-time expense. I'm sorry, a reoccurring debt on it with one-time expenses with an unknown amount of variability that will come in with that. As a matter of fact, we're seeing that right now, trying to, in the school surcharge fee, pay down some of the outstanding debts that can go to a pay-go model, at least for the one-time expense capital project items, because you just don't know what the revenue is. And going for that partial, you could do that. You could say that they're only using 11 years out of the whatever useful life.
Yeah.
But I would counter with, then we should do that across the board for all assets within the community. Look at their useful
Yeah,
life.
that may be.
You've got a road tax that pays for a road that lasts 6 years.
Right.
You know, meanwhile, we're building schools with a 30-year lifespan. That's a whole nother layer of math you could add to.
No, I agree. The other thing though that strikes me is that the whole point is that the new units are providing a cash flow in perpetuity once they're built.
That's true, and
And
that's what we
both
discussed.
both in property tax payments and in income tax payments associated with the owners of the unit. So again, it seems like this is almost punitive to the first buyer because they're being asked to pay for 100% of an asset that's going to last for 3 or 4 times their hold period, number one. And then number two, they're going to be paying property taxes and income taxes while they live in that home. And those property taxes and income taxes, as of now at least, are being used to defease the cost of financing to build the asset. So it seems to me like we're like double or triple charging those homeowners.
Well, it's a matter of viewpoint and what objectives you want. Obviously, income tax and property tax you use to defray expenses, but you can see right across the hall, and they got the TV crews there tonight. Our current property taxes and our current income taxes combined are not keeping up with the operational and maintenance needs that everyone shares. This is simply going, who pays the expense when you add a household to the Howard County school system? And you recuperate that during the sale. If you have a good school system, your house is more valuable and it carries for let's put it this way. It is a one-time expense. You can't go back and charge a developer 30 years from now when Hammond High School wears out again. You only are asking for the initial upfront, and from then on, income tax and property tax are paying all those items in perpetuity. And you could also argue that that is punitive to existing homeowners, that they have to pay for other development, which is not bringing up in enough income and property tax to even make the requirements year to year.
Well, frankly, I don't think it would matter because we will have built our last house in Howard County with these numbers.
Right. Can I say something?
Yeah.
I think, I totally understand your point, especially that last one you just made. And I think that what is important to understand is that this exercise, what it pointed out to me was that if you got to watch what you're doing comparing Montgomery County to Howard County. And you can't pick certain things and then forget other things, because Montgomery County is now fairly recently using this need cost-based thing to adjust the UPP and derive those fees. And then if we are going to do it that same way, guess what? It's astronomical. So maybe that we can't be exactly like them there. Our surcharges are more because of how long they were too low. So I don't remember us actually having a motion that said to adjust the UPP for Howard County when looking to apply Montgomery County's thing based on surcharges. We talked about making the UPP of HOCO apply it to Howard County, meaning tiers, meaning impact areas, meaning how much we're going to charge for these areas, the way they're charging for areas. I don't think we actually passed, and can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we did not.
We did not say, hey, if our surcharges are different, make them all come out in the wash with what they're doing with UPP.
No, we did, yeah, and I didn't mean to apply that. I
Okay.
was under the impression that the motion was to pass it based on, but use Howard County school surcharge.
As the base.
As the
As the
basis,
basis.
the starting
That's
point.
That's what I thought was.
Well,
yeah.
what we passed that I'm recalling was that we decided to put it aside, what we were charging, and all of what we were deciding to do was going to be on top of what we were charging, not analyzing some comparison of what we were charging. But anyway, just to get back to this, I think one good point of this, even if you would look at it and gasp and say, we'll never develop again if we did this, right, is to say, all right, that's Howard County has goals, Howard County has needs, Howard County has different types of things we want to do in a different way than Montgomery County is doing right now. And they're basing certain things on costs that are making us faint, right? They have different goals, they have different money, they have different budgets that they've had for decades that we didn't. And so, you know, I think it's interesting to at least look at, okay, if we base all these things on current costs and current needs, and you know, the land acquisition part isn't in here, that's assumed in the transfer tax, so it's not like 100% all new people. But I'm just saying, this is the good point to me that this brought to the floor was that we can't just do everything the same as them.
Oh, and we're not.
Yeah,
And
that's-
we're not,
But
but
so I want to see if I can summarize real quick where I think we are with what we did pass, and Jeremy, jump in if you think I have this wrong, but we defined tier 1 as 105, tier 2 as 110, tier 3 as 115. And Dan Newby said that he thought that was an appropriate target because that matched up with some historical information with the school system. I don't recall if we passed the 40-80-120 along with it. We did not.
Here are our last motions from last week, just for reference.
And we also didn't pass the 543 element of Montgomery County, even though we did talk about that, and that's what basically, you know, you've come back with, I think. So it seems to me that and then we were making it on the assumption, Brent, that we were starting with the baseline of our existing school surcharge number, which now has gone to 815.
So then, and Jeff made this point a little bit earlier in his presentation, does it make sense for us to have two motions out of this? One that's to adopt a UPP model, but maybe a second one that comes back and looks at some type of formula or some type of way of squaring it to Howard's in, because it's almost like we have two asks. We're saying move from the school surcharge to a UPP model, which feels like one ask, which I think we all kind of agree that that's a probable route. And then the second ask is come up with some basis or some formula that fits Howard's needs that might be based on MoCo's usage, but it's to, you know, Brent's points, we can't use MoCo's numbers. That's just not going to work. Is that's what it sounds like?
I'm not sure, because I think we all along have been talking about using the existing school surcharge structure, which is now the 815 times the square footage. What I think I hear you saying, and what Jeff was offering as the MoCo model, was there's actually a fixed dollar impact fee for each type of housing.
Right.
As opposed to what we have, which is the 815 times the square footage.
Right.
So it seems like if we're gonna move away from our current model, which there's nothing stopping us from doing that, I think, but we're introducing another
We're introducing
another huge
Yeah.
issue that I don't know if we can,
I don't think that,
Really
I don't think the back end of that is us.
right?
Yeah, the first part might be the recommendation from us, but not the how to implement, I guess.
Right. Jeremy, I know you were
Yeah, no, I think I'm in agreement with what you all are saying. I don't think we're here to litigate how to calculate Howard County's existing school surcharge fee. You know, that's already been established, you know, that's gone through legislations past the council, and certainly by all means, if the council or the county wanted to change how to apply the school, how to calculate the school surcharge fee, they could do that. I think our recommendation was take whatever that is and apply a factor to it if that development occurs in an area that meets some adequacy threshold that makes that school overcrowded.
Right.
And so if the idea would be you implement this model and you'd apply this utility payment whenever development's added where a school is overcrowded. And if that starting point, if that school surcharge changes at some point, you'd still apply the factor.
Right.
The factor would work. And so, I mean, I don't know, this is the first, we've discussed if we want to consider a recommendation of suggesting to the council, we should move Howard County's school surcharge fee to something more similar to Montgomery County's impact fee. I think my very first instinct would be, I don't know if that's an avenue that we want to go down. I'm not saying finding on it one way or another, but I think whatever it is, and right now it's this school surcharge fee, you apply the premium payment to it based on where that development occurs and based on the capacity of the schools in that area.
If we're at 105, 110, 115, and we're trying to hold Montgomery's 40, 80, 120, and then apply 543 to 40, 80, 120, that would give us our total UPP.
I mean, I note that, one of the things that Jeff said that jumped out at me was they used 135% for their tier 3 because they considered that to be extreme overcrowding and therefore warranting a much higher percentage UPP.
But we've already passed 105, 110, 115.
Right.
Tier
Correct.
one,
I'm
tier
saying
two.
that if we're trying to say our tier 3 is 115 and Montgomery County's tier 3 is 135%, those things are very different. And so I don't think the same percentage would make sense.
You could do a math of what percentage less it is, what percentage less.
You mean instead of 40, 80, 120, it's.
It would, like, 120 would have to be less because they were applying
Yeah, no, I
120
understand.
to
Yeah, exactly.
135%. Right. They wanted to apply it to 115.
So one of the core takeaways of this was current school surcharge fee is insufficient as calculated. If we use that as our basis for going forward,
Still be insufficient.
we're going to come up with 8,000 to 23,000 shy.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just getting a little lost because I'm going back to Jeff, and
Yeah.
Jeff's Montgomery County discussion was they base it on the cost of a new seat and the number of students, and how can
I was thinking,
our numbers be so vastly different?
I was thinking the same thing, like, so conceptually, Montgomery, an impact fee is based on the actual cost per seat per year. So conceivably, all of the impact fees that Montgomery County collects for all the new homes should pay for all of the new seats that are required for those children that are coming to Montgomery County. And if our school surcharge seems to be higher than that, then of course, we're not Montgomery County again, we really got to do it specific to each jurisdiction. But that's the concept of impact fees, is that the fees collected pay for the capital cost of expanding.
So let me, I'm gonna talk without thinking, which is dangerous, but, if we're trying to create a system whereby the county council and the executive can make a determination on whether or not they're getting the volume of new housing that they want. If we create a system whereby the school surcharge is where they can focus their attention for making adjustments. If the school surcharge is $90 a foot and we're not getting anything, and we can reduce it to 8, but we can leave the UPP structure in place, and I'm gonna just use 40, 80, 120 for this purpose, but
if we leave that in place, but the only number we have to adjust is what should the school surcharge base fee be? It makes it a whole lot easier, so you're not having to readjust everything every year if you're trying to increase the volume of new housing that's to match the contemplated volume in HOCO by design.
And fundamentally, I agree, but the argument is, are we providing adequate public facilities for children, or are we trying to meet a growth target? And the title of this committee is Public Facilities Ordinance.
I get it, but but now, remember, we're not trying to add new seats system-wide. We're trying to maintain our structure system-wide and then allocate students to the structures we have as best we can. And then make determinations as to whether or not additional seats need to be spot developed. Because there's no way to rezone to Lisbon Elementary from Ilchester. For argument's sake. So it seems to me that we're not in a situation anymore where we're trying to add capacity because we don't have enough seats system-wide. We're in a situation where we have to adjust where our seats are after we explore all other options to reallocate students to seats within a reasonable distance. And that's a very different calculation of what we've been doing for the last 35, 40 years.
Oh, we're looking at what the cost per seat impact of getting this whole, regardless if the enrollment is flat or declining. We have additional capacity. Gets into the redistricting. That even gets into
The percentage.
for decommissioning. Probably not there.
Yeah.
Right here.
Like Brett, looking at these numbers, right, like.
Their capacity.
if
Their
you were
capacity tier.
presuming That new
Their
development,
capacity tier,
the new
105.
development alone fully fund
120.
adding
Capacity.
capacity in perpetuity based on an assumption that each unit, including multifamily, is adding 0.45 students per unit. And that's, as we've seen, multifamily is not coming anywhere close to that.
That is actual undisputed fact. That is the number of students in Howard County divided by the number of units in Howard County, not unit type.
No, but the new units that are being added are over 50% multifamily. So the fact that the existing distribution is way more skewed towards single-family detached rather than multifamily.
I was looking at the development monitoring report before this meeting, and it seemed to be almost evenly distributed in thirds, single family, townhomes, and a third multifamily. But regardless, at the moment, current structure doesn't even address unit types. It just addresses square footage.
I understand, yeah.
And that is an honest to God average. Now, if we want to get down to drilling down to each individual house, charging them a fee based on their individual impact at that point of sale, we could, but that's not traditional.
I don't think it's legal, actually.
I don't think it would be legal to go, you got a kid, your fee is this. You got two kids, your fee is that.
Yeah,
So
and you're
we have-
pregnant, so you're gonna pay for half of one. even though-
we have to obfuscate it. The thing is it more fair to distribute that average across the entire subset of new development that's coming in, or that entire subset broken into three categories? Because whatever one decreases, you've gotta have one on the other side of the equation to balance the books that will increase. It can't be, we're going to decrease this because they're townhomes, but we're not going to touch anything else that leads to structural changes.
Is our charge as a committee to work out all of those minute details with county council? In a recommendation?
No, it's not.
I would just say, you've been shown that this, as presently designed, will result in a net deficit that we have to handle the school system for the upcoming years until by two just.
But where we are now is worse. Right?
I think we're getting off topic. We're getting really back into our own heart of debate positions with this, which we could do want any motion all day long, right? I have a position to get to a motion. Because, I mean, are there other presentations on this exact topic that
No.
want to be made before we would make a motion to continue with the UPP finalization?
No, excuse me. So I just wanted to let you know, I have up meetings 14 and 15, all the motions that have been made recently, just so you can have your reference point up here. So this is helpful. I just wanted to throw that out there, so you know where we were and where we ended with our final motion of the evening. And that was the percentages for the percent for the tiers. So just, that's where, when we only got to tier 1 last
Oh,
time.
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
We didn't get to tier 2 or
Yeah.
tier 3 percentages
Yeah.
for elementary, middle, and high school.
Right. I remember, yeah, do you mind? Can I just talk about math? Like, someone had asked at the end of our last meeting when we couldn't pass the tier 1 possibility, right? And I said, what's the basic math? And the basic math, if you were going to just do it mathematically the same, because we can argue all day about whether we should be the same and how much is HOCO different and why and all that, but if one wanted to do it mathematically the same, their tier 1 is 105, we said to keep it. Their tier 2 is 110. The committee voted to make it
No,
120.
ours is 110. Theirs is 120.
This is one.
That's what I meant, 120, 110. Theirs is 135, ours is 115. So like, if you just did the math, tier 1 were the same. Tier 2 were 9% different. Tier 3 were 17% different. I mean, that's the math. So if you wanted to just do it by math, you would take the amount of the overage, the same in tier 1. You would make it 9% less in tier 2, and you make it 17% less in tier 3. Like that would just be the math. Somebody had asked that question. I'm not necessarily making that motion. I just wanted to answer that question that we never really finished at the end of the last meeting. Someone said, what's the basic math? I just wanted to answer that. So that's what it is.
So,
So you're saying instead of 40, 80, 120, it would be something like 40, 60, 80, whatever the percentage came out to, right? It'd be less.
Like the tier 1 would be the same,
So 16 and 2/3.
and it would be 9% less than tier 2, 17% less than tier 3.
I mean, one way.
If we kept their overage percent.
But the thing that kind of make it actually complicated. Remember the tiers are basically 3, 4, 5.
that's right.
So the 3, 4, 5, that's fixed. That's not really a question because that has to do with the proportion of the grade. It's really the 40, you're saying to adjust to 40, 20,
Mhm.
right? Which translates to the same adjustment of all the tiers.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah,
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 I-
right.
I'm just talking about
Yeah,
the math.
right,
That's
right.
all.
So Jeremy and Eric, which you guys did a lot with this. At 40, 80, 120, are you thinking that you want that to be readjusted? Like Jeff is saying, is it 40, 60, 80? Is it 40, 70, 100? So if we have two deltas to deal with. And set aside that tier 1 UPP for elementary, if we have to,
That's sort of fixed.
yeah, that's kind of, now it might just be cluttering our conversation, but if we go to 40, 60, 80 or 40, 70, 100, and we stay with the 3, 4, 5 ratios, that'll derive the tier 1 UPP for, for each of those 3 school types. That's where the 16 and 2/3 came from.
Mhm.
So it's basically in response to your question of, well, given how our starting point with our school surcharge fee at 815, should we be reconsidering the 40, 80, 120 and keep the 543 as the baseline model? I think those are the two things that we're looking at and discussing, Lisa. I mean, basically,
Yeah.
yours is the same. It's just, this is, instead of adding plus 9%, plus 7% or whatever, it's just, instead of 40, 80, 120, we're gonna say, we're gonna go 40, 70, or 40, 60, 80, because our baseline school surcharge fee is so much higher. I don't know.
And I think comes out to about 70, if I'm thinking this right, which I'm saying. So if you take 110 divided by 120, because ours is 110 instead
Oh, I
of
see.
120,
Yeah.
right? So 110 divided by 120, that's 0.9166. Multiply that,
5% plus.
multiply that times, what was it, 80?
80. Now you're at
You end
70.
up with 73%. 73.3%.
That's if we're
Yeah,
trying to
that's
track
fine.
the local model, you know.
That's the kind of,
Yeah.
that's if you're, but we learned that MoCo model is not really based on,
It's arbitrary.
it's arbitrary, right?
No, it's,
Right.
Exactly.
So they're arbitrary but proportional to Howard County.
Right.
So arbitrary numbers proportional to Howard County's, are we good with that?
We need help.
Yeah, right.
So if you look at the bottom line of the spreadsheet, I calculated this for this
Okay.
4X. And it's outrageous, but it's 165 is break even. And anything that reduces those numbers from there is at the detriment of the school system.
well, no, it's not, because it's more than they're getting now with the current system.
Because of the
Getting below
Right.
one,
because of the UDP, you're adding more.
We're adding, all we're doing.
They're
is
not getting
adding.
anything now,
Right.
other than time.
Something? The UPP, I mean, what's the incentive for the school system to get the numbers as close to 100 or less than if they're making more money? What incentivizes
You mean
them?
by not getting utilization rates in line, you mean?
Well, like, all right, so why would I want my school to be at 100% when I can get all this money at 115%? What incentivizes the school system to do their job and get those overcrowded schools down? If they're making more money, what incentivizes the school system to make the changes?
What's incentivizing the school systems now?
Hey,
Nothing.
to be overcrowded. Does that make sense?
She had a question.
Laura has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Laura.
No,
Sorry.
I just said there's, so part of the reason why I think some of us gravitated towards the UPP model is because by doing nothing, the school system is controlling development in the county. And so what it does by going to the system is it puts some of that control back into planning and zoning. It puts some of that control back at the county council level, because clearly the school board has had years to fix these problems. And through stagnation, through doing nothing, I don't blame the situation on too much development. I mean, I think at some point in time, we have to say the school board has to accept that they have created part of the problem where we are right now. And by going to the UPP system, you're kind of saying to the school board, okay, we gave you years to figure this out. You didn't. So now we got to do something different, because 0 times anything is 0. And that's pretty much what we're getting with, development and new construction and new opportunities for people to move to Howard County, and for us to keep our county moving forward and growing, because it's stagnating with the old system. And I thought the UPP would change that.
Well, I think we've kind of moved past that. I mean, we've already voted to pursue the UPP system. It's just a matter of how exactly we recommend structuring it. I think John's point is an interesting one, and that's then where are the incentives to reallocate seats and to make fewer schools overcrowded if by leaving them overcrowded,
They get the money.
you get higher UPP payments.
Although I think Laura's point was saying that part of doing this would be that there'd be no school test anymore.
No, that's correct.
And that would be the incentive for the school system. That's kind of conceptual, right?
Well, I think
Here is money.
I think it frees up the school system, frankly, to do what they need to do without the pressure of we have to make these adjustments, because if we don't make them, then we're choking off the county's growth. It's not that anymore. It goes to the issue of, I think John's issue is, we don't want to create a reverse incentive to leave schools crowded,
Right.
which is, I think, which
That's exactly what I'm saying.
What does Montgomery County, do we know what they do in that realm? I mean, obviously, these aren't going to stay crowded in perpetuity.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they moved to the system, so they no longer have
Because it's across counties, so it
Projects
doesn't, right,
on
yeah.
closed anyone, because there's a recognition that there was, you know, a need, there was a recognition that even though they had an APFO that held up development for 4 or 5 years, they were still experiencing crowding.
As we are.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing is they're in a situation where, their school population has been declining.
As is ours.
Right. So it's a little, so those fundamental changes allowed them, or, you know, prompted them to do their new system with no APFO, no schools hold, and just charge the UPP to get more money.
I mean, I'll just defend the school system for a second. Like, they're in it to help the students. Like, the suggestion that they would purposely overcrowd a school, which is not in the student's best interest.
Where's Vanessa at, man? Let's talk to
Like,
her.
it just, I don't know, it doesn't
It's
seem.
pretty
Ask
offensive.
Vanessa.
I'm sorry, this has been pretty offensive towards the work we do as a school board and the school system. We do it for the mission. We don't do it for the money. We don't do it to stop development. We don't do it to, like, we are in it for the kids. And the idea that our school system is growing. It's not growing at the same pace it was, but it's still growing. It is not declining. Enrollment is not declining, period. And to put those facts, put those statements out there as fact, and to criticize what the school board has been doing and trying to move our schools to be balanced capacity across the school system, which is what we did successfully in 2019, and we got raked over the coals for it. Like, give us some credit that we're doing our job. And like, to say that we're not doing our job, we haven't had the money to do everything that you guys would like us to do, to build more schools, to be able to develop more. If we had more money, we could do more, but we are behind by decades for updating our schools. And to say that this is the fault of a derelict Board of Education is completely untrue. So I'll stop. Please continue on with the discussion about the UPP.
Fair enough. Jen or Tim, I mean, do either of you have thoughts on the whole issue of 40, 120, 40, 70, 100, 543? And any of that? What do you think? What do you think we should be considering in that regard?
I don't know what it is yet. It isn't complete 100% payment per seat. It certainly, it needs to be proportional. And over the, like, if one wants to amortize it over the length of, the expected length of a building of, or of a school, so let's say 30-ish years, then how do we take that as our basis? But you may have a better idea.
At a base level, I'm trying to catch up on this conversation as a newcomer to the group. Dan filled me in a bit, but there's still a lot of nuance to it. It does seem that a new home who has the potential to bring a new student to the school system that didn't have a seat before, or that has a unique impact to the school system in terms of capacity over an existing home that would turn over from a family that once had a child in the school system. Maybe the parents aged in place for a while, and then it turns over to another family that brings students with them. That's a different type of impact. That home has already been there, had the opportunity to yield students once, had the opportunity or the burden to pay for that seat that they were needing for their students when they came. So it seems that there is a need for a unique fee structure for new homes. I don't know what, to be honest with you, I don't know what the 40, 80, 120, I'm not familiar enough with the conversation to be able to weigh in on those specific numbers. I do like the 105, 110, 115 approach in terms of capacity utilization. I think what Montgomery County is using is quite high. And we would have very few schools that reach those limits in the near future. And the Board of Ed is established by policy that the target utilization level is 90 to 100, with 110% being a trigger to consider boundary adjustment. So those are the numbers that are in our policies, and I think it makes sense to attach this effort to those numbers from our perspective. So I'm listening and absorbing, and some of the numbers, honestly, I don't know enough to weigh in on. But that's what I have right now.
Can I make a comment on something that you said? Because
Go ahead.
what I heard is there's a supposition that people who are buying new construction are coming in from outside of the county and bringing children with them. But I will tell you, in my experience, a majority of the new homes that I've sold in my time selling houses here in Howard County, I will tell you that probably 70, maybe even as high as 75% of the people buying new houses are people who already live in the county somewhere else, and they just want a bigger, newer house. So they're moving from their townhouse in Columbia to maybe a single family home in Glenwood. So I think the supposition that all these new homes are bringing all new children into the school system is not a realistic way to look at this. And I believe there was a chart somewhere way back that showed exactly what it is I'm talking about. So when we talk about these impact fees or school surcharge fees, or, you know, a rose is a rose by any other name, call it what you want. So you're going to have people who already live in Howard County who are just trying to stay in the county, but get a bigger house, basically double, triple paying for something they're already paying for. So I just feel like if that's the supposition we're going on, that all these new homes are bringing only people from outside the county with their families in tow, that's not realistic.
Lisa.
Again, we're kind of getting back into positional debate. And I could counter that and talk about, well, same with resales. They're probably staying in the county too. I mean, it's not relevant to, I think, to what we're trying to do. Right now, we have one big thing left to pass the motion to be done with this amazing, huge, giant recommendation that people want to finish up. And that is, we've defined tier 1, we've defined tier 2, we've defined tier 3. We know how MoCo defined those 3 tiers, and we know the overages that MoCo it has for those 3 tiers. We can't just be exactly like them, and we can't be different, and they're arbitrary and we'll be arbitrary. I mean, we could talk all night. When you get to the end of the day, the council's gonna start this all over from scratch. They're not just gonna take whatever we're saying. And I think that the council's gonna wanna see other recommendations from us besides this program. We have to get to that, because they may or may not even want to do this. And then we'll have nothing to recommend to them at all if they don't want to do this. So we've got to finish this. I really want us to please, somebody make a motion, maybe Jeremy should, because this was your baby. Like, so how much for tier 1, how much for tier 2, how much for tier 3? And even those of us who voted against this system in the beginning would like to see this resolved and move on.
Well, I think, Paul, you got a hand up, and then I'm going to go back to Jeremy or Aaron.
Yeah, so picking up on where Lisa is as well. I mean, we recognize that we can't escalate this to capture the full cost. I mean, the analysis is great, but we're not going to get there. Pick a target of how much of it do we think you can close the gap with, and then whatever the arithmetic is, put that in as the recommendation. I mean, whether it's the 40, 80, 120, we know what that gap yields in terms of cost per seat, or bump it up 5% on each one and see what that does to close it a little further. But we all agree that we're not going to go up to the level that Montgomery County is. So pick a number, vote on it, and move forward.
Aaron or Jeremy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in line with a lot of what people have said. I think we have this great motion. I think it's obviously, I made it. I think it's really strong motion to go to the UPP, dealing with these,
I'm a great.
dealing with these details. I agree, like the council's gonna fill it in. Like, I think we've had this conversation. I think we should make a recommendation of what the number should be, recognizing the council's probably gonna take it and adjust it themselves. They'll do their own fiscal analysis, and then we can move on to all the other motions that are
We
on.
also have the wherewithal to do it, that we don't have.
Yeah.
on-
We don't have the time.
Yeah, I mean,
So, Aaron, any last thoughts on,
I would probably just say that keep the 40, 80, 120 at this juncture. This would be my.
So can I make a motion that we have a model with the 40, 80, 20 as laid out here, understanding the financial implications of it, and put that in as our approach to this, to the UPP model.
at 543?
Can you say that in simple terms? for
No.
me? Okay.
I understand how well I say it, but- So the motion is to proceed with the UPP model with the premiums at 40% for tier 1, 80% for tier 2, and 120% premium for tier 3.
With the distribution of those percentages on a 5, well,
534.
534, right?
What does that mean?
Five, five elementary grades, we're saying
Three
1
middle
through
grades,
5.
4
I know
high
that monetarily.
What would be the,
I mean, we're right back
it'll
to
be the 16
16
and 10,
2/3,
10,
yeah.
and 2/3.
Yeah, tier one would be the same as.
You know, there's,
There's almost no.
There's as many kids in kindergarten as any other.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
4,000 kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great. It's a great.
That's
So-
great.
Can I just ask on tier 1,
I think that makes sense.
40, what does that mean? They're charging how much more than the surcharge?
40% is the sum of 16 and 2/3, 10%, 13 and 1, right?
Yes, 40 is the sum.
I mean, just
So essentially, we're taking that 40.
Okay, proceed with the
dividing
UPP
by
model
The 5 plus 3.
using-
And multiplying.
12
by-
schools,
Yeah.
40%.
divided by 12
Yeah,
per school year.
so of that 40%, yeah, 5/12 goes to elementary, 3/12 goes to middle.
it needs to be
Oh,
six.
where it goes.
I
not
agree.
what's being
Needs to be
charged.
6.
That's what I was trying
It
to
needs to be
figure out.
6.
What's the monetary
Okay, so
effect?
may I restate this? So proceed with the UPP model using 40% premium payment for tier 1, 80% and then premium payment for tier 2, and 100% premium payment for tier 3 using the 543 distribution.
What's?
140.
643.
It's a 6.
634.
6
Three, I'm sorry, okay, 4, okay. And then, is that correct?
Paul, you had tier
Thank
3
you.
was 120?
80, 126.
It's what it says up there. She just said it.
Thank you, sorry.
48,
You said
120.
I was-
No, 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 I said 100.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
40, 80, 120, 634.
634.
So that's
Okay.
kind of like result in elementary being.
So we added kindergarten.
So that's why.
We
it's
we
6.
decided to add kinder, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more rational that way. It does- but it doesn't give you an
Second
extra
part,
report.
643, is where the money's going.
I'll deal.
It's the distribution of the money, correct?
Thank you.
And I second.
Okay, Jen seconded, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, folks. Thank you for, okay. I just want to make sure I understood and I captured it correctly. Okay,
Okay, so now we have to call for discussion. Do we have any more?
I'm just gonna throw out the last piece. In order to do this, we will generate anywhere, calculate $20 to $100 per child in an additional revenue in exchange for overcrowding.
Okay. Call for the vote?
yes. Mr. Arterburn,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Pastor Grande,
Yes.
Mr. Crossley is absent, Mr. Domu,
Yes.
Mr. Essence absent, Mr. Glykoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Lovelace. And Mr. Rogers,
Oh, he can't. actually-
Can you not vote?
I just abstain.
You just abstain, okay. Ms. Mallow,
Yes.
Ms. Markovitz?
I'm gonna say that at the beginning, this whole motion concerns me because I am very concerned about eliminating the whole weight. But within the UPP conversation, as it is, I'm doing this.
Ms. Pantano is absent. Mr. Scherer?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Oops, sorry, my equation is not working. Yeah, okay, I think it's just not wanting to work here for me this evening. Sorry, folks. It passes, I just need to get to the tally, so. And the motion passes 10-1.
Okay, so the one thing we haven't defined yet, and it goes back to you, Jen, that's the whole issue of SRC, LRC, whatever. I know you have a presentation. Do we want to take the temperature before we go through the
I
presentation?
can tell you what the bottom line up front is, which
Yeah.
is my first slide.
Okay,
So that is,
Yeah.
if we recommend that APO calculations using numerator and denominator, other than the current calculation, then none of the school system's numbers for planning and calculations will align with APO.
Yep.
And I can,
Sort of expand that a little bit.
Do you want to share your screen?
sure,
Please, and you can just, you log in and then,
I am logged in. so give me
Okay.
a second.
do you have sharing ability? Lisa's coming back. She may have to as the host.
Okay, what?
Still popular all.
Yes, so at the bottom, you should have a blue little oblong
Yeah.
shaped,
Are you trying to share? that?
yes. Do you have to give her permission?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so no, yep, that's what, we were just checking before.
Sorry,
That's okay.
it's getting a little cold. Okay.
You can start sharing. Screen to share.
and the current calculation is LRC, just to
It's
clarify, right?
the denominator, the numerator, and this is on the third slide. The numerator is 3 years out from today, projections.
Right.
And the denominator is locally rated capacity.
Right.
So.
And-
Let you read that for just a hot minute.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. The only thing is, I don't think you need to be defensive. I think it's written in the negative as opposed to the positive, and I think we're kind of already there. But
Okay, well,
I'll let people weigh in as
So
necessary.
said differently, it should be locally.
yes,
The denominator should be LRC.
yeah, I just kind of wanted to
Yeah.
give a reason, so. And then these are the things that I think we should consider, what the current numerator and denominator looks like, where locally rated capacity is used, why state rated capacity numbers are not physically impossible in some of our schools. And then I also have examples from schools that are higher state rated capacity and schools that are lower state rated capacity and what that would look like. So here's the current calculation. It is the third year of enrollment projections divided by the school capacity at LR, locally rated capacity. And for elementary schools, that's 6 grades of K to 5, middle schools, it's 6 through 8, high school 9 through 12. It does not include pre-K. Regional early childhood centers, ages 0 through 5 or Portvis. So when we look at what the basis of our planning is, it is currently based on locally rated capacity. So the Board of Education is making decisions on a feasibility study, on capital construction criteria, which we just passed 2 meetings ago. So there will now be standardized capital construction criteria, enrollment projections, and budget requests. All of those are based on LRC. And will continue to be based on LRC because that was decided about a decade ago. The county council currently makes their decisions and planning based for APFA regulations They're part of the capital budget and they're part of the operating budget, again, on LRC. And then, oh, this slide didn't quite work. Where, oh, there it is. So where we fall into it is we are making recommendations to the county council. And if we recommended state rated capacity, that one bullet point would then go out of alignment with everything else. These are just, it's just information on what's locally rated and what's state rated and how it's calculated. Figure, if you want me to stay on this slide for a minute, that's great. If you don't, I can just move on because we've talked about it. So there are some unique things about state rated capacity. It is a calculation, and here is how it's calculated. Some concerns is that the building code for classrooms of occupancy is 20 square feet per person. The state rated capacity for middle and high schools assigns 25 students per teaching space. However, a 500 square foot room that allows 25 occupants, either one of those kids isn't getting in or the teacher isn't. So.
You're out, John.
Perfect. Darn.
So the other thing about it is that it's not locally determined by our subject matter experts like Tim or locally elected leaders. And if we based it on state rated capacity, it could change with no input at the IAC, the Interagency Commission, as they review and update, which could affect the amount of state capital dollars being allocated to HCPSS. So if we went with that, we take some of our local control away. So here's some examples. In each of these cases, the state rated capacity is higher than what the locally rated capacity is. And so I showed the impact per grade and the impact per classroom. So we know that we have, we've talked about Bryant Woods a lot. It would be an additional 8 students for each and every classroom at Bryant Woods. So these were just some of the higher examples of where the differential between state rated capacities. On the flip side, here are some of the schools that would then become magically overnight over capacity. So Howard High School would be the most egregious at 142%, because the state rated capacity for Howard High School is only 1,000 students.
What drives those huge discrepancies? Is it just the square foot stuff, or is it the other programming that's at the schools, or?
So it's the state rated capacity is derived from the rooms that by use count as teaching stations, and then they assign a capacity to those rooms, and then there's a multiplier. In Howard's case, it hasn't been reviewed in a little while. It may be that it just needs to be updated. They are updated when we submit for capital projects. Otherwise, unless the state requests an update, it just persists.
But it is, middle schools and high schools are 85% of the sum.
Right.
And that is because you have FACS classrooms, tech ed, CTE classrooms, theater, dance, that have a lower efficiency rating because you may not be teaching. If there's 7 periods in a day, you may only have 5 dance classes. Where your classroom is probably used when you are not teaching in it, someone else may be using it. So those classrooms have a lower efficiency space utilization. So there you go.
No one else.
But if we were using the state rated capacity, it would be a huge culture shift. And it would cause a lot of confusion in the community because it would go from, oh, my school's not overcrowded to, what are you talking about? No, I'm at 142%, but make everyone else leave, not my kid.
Good luck. I mean, we're at 1504 right now at Oakland Mills.
Right.
I've always been confused. Sometimes the state rated capacity is actually,
Less.
less,
Yes, and
which is,
so this is the example of
yeah,
when state rated capacity is more,
more sometimes it's.
and this is the state rated capacity when it's
I
less.
got it. Okay, got it. Oh, I see.
Yeah, this is the high ones.
So I tried to give you
I got
both
it.
examples.
Okay, I missed that.
So the motion would effectively be to,
Yeah, make the motion, yeah.
did you? Go ahead.
I raised it 50 many meetings ago and feel sort of guilty for throwing it out in the air. I'd make a motion that we use the local rate capacity as our standard for this.
And your numerator too.
And the continuing of the forward projection numerator, because you can't have, DPC needs some time. They can't magically say, it's in the future, your zoning and your development is future forward. It's not, okay, the project's approved today, magically we have these spaces.
Let me withdraw my motion and ask Jen to make this work.
Okay,
So it goes back to your slide 2, I think, right?
yes,
It was 3 years?
Yeah.
For yourself.
yes, 3
There
years.
it is.
Okay, 3-year trip, that's right.
Can I ask Jen a question?
Sure, Laura.
Hey, Jen, I think I heard you say that we changed to this LRC rate about 10 or 11 years ago. So I have 2 questions. What were we using before that? And how did the change manifest itself throughout the school system? And what was the impact to the students and the teachers?
I do not have that background information.
I think we always had local capacity calculations. They were all adjusted 10 years ago. Starting with the high schools, then the middles, then the elementaries.
May I, because I'm very familiar with that.
So you've always been using the local rate
Committee
capacity.
elected to make that a standard. Prior to that, it was not a standard, but it was an artifact of adjusting square footage per classrooms in the school system. That's back in the Ellen Giles era.
Did you hear that, Laura?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is the school board has always used the LRC. It's just 10 or 11 years ago, they made a change to it. Is that right?
They formalized it. We made it the official metric for judging school capacity.
So they didn't
But it's
change it. They
as far
just
as
said this is
APO
the official.
Yeah, but it's always been used, but you're just saying it's formalized. Yeah, it's
And
always
what
been-
was so there was no impact because you didn't change anything. You just put it in stone.
Codified it, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
So in effect, what the motion itself is just continuing, a
With the current,
continuation of where we are.
yes. So
I'll second that.
I move that the school capacity calculation remains,
Utilization.
utilization calculation remains as it is.
Yeah,
Calculated.
that's still- that simplifies it.
Well,
That's-
we
yeah.
should put in there. Local
That's
rate
good.
capacity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you got that written?
I
So, go ahead. Because,
Ken, do you mean to apply this motion to the UPP model? Or to say, we think APOS calculations, even if we didn't do the UPP model, should stay local rated?
Yes,
So or should we kind of put in the motion that we mean both?
Universally.
Universally
You can
applied or
put-
something?
regardless of which model the county council adopts, we recommend the use of the school utilization capacity with locally rated capacity and a third year of enrollment projection. It's on the screen.
I just copied that.
Okay, great.
That's what I did. Okay.
Even better.
So we have to call for discussions, I think we've already had, but I need to call for it anyway. Any other comments or thoughts or debate? Then we'll call for the motion or call for the vote.
Okay, Mr. Arterburn?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Casagrande?
Yes.
Mr. Demu?
Yes.
Mr. Glykoff?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lovelace?
Yes.
Mr. Lubley is not here. Ms. Mallow?
Yes.
Ms. Markovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Scher?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
And that was unanimous for everyone here. Motion passes 11-0.
All right, let's, I'm afraid we're not gonna get to both of the issues we have left. So I want to throw out there, one is whether the UPP model is, whether we're going to recommend the UPP model applies to affordable housing as well as market rate housing. That's issue number one. And issue number two is the whole multimodal conversation. My inclination is to say, let's wrap up the housing stuff first, and then that'll make it a little easier for you all to start drafting your presentation that will support the public hearing. And if we can get to the multimodal, we will. If not, we'll start it and then we'll finish it before we go to.
Sure.
I'm almost certain to tell you that the multimodal piece will take us maybe 5 minutes.
Okay, because I do.
Oh, well, good.
Recommendations are drafted already. We just-
Okay.
I do have Chris Etal here too, in case there's any additional questions. So you then,
Well, if you think that's right, if you think that's accurate, then let's go with that because we can knock it out then. And then if we do leak over in housing affordability, we'll deal with it. But I can see we could get dragged into housing affordability and not finish. So at least we'll have one of the two items resolved.
Okay, then I make a motion.
so excuse me, I did have them up here from what he said from his presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
I move to rename the APFO roads test to the APFO multimodal transportation test for all instances in Howard County subdivision regulations and Howard County design rule.
Second.
Discussion? Call for the vote?
Yep, call for- I call for it.
Come on, Lynn.
I know, sorry. Okay, all right, let me just call for the vote. I'm just trying to make this easy with my copy in here. All right. I'll have to fix that later. Okay. All right, Mr. Otterburn?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Casagrande?
Yes.
Mr. Demu?
Yes.
Mr. Glykoff?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Lovelace?
Yes.
Mr. Lubley is not here. Ms. Mallow?
Yes.
Ms. Markovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Scher?
Yes.
And Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Okay. And the motion carries.
Okay. I propose a motion. I move to adopt the pedestrian crossings at APFO intersections test to the APFO multimodal transportation test as outlined in the April 2025 proposed APFO multimodal transportation tests memo. There's a,
I second that.
That's what, yeah.
this was the memo that was sent to everybody.
And that's what's on the screen. Oh, that's the ADA one. Hold on, sorry. That's it here.
Then this was the pedestrian crossings one we talked about, the first of the two tests.
The main changes from this is that there is a formula applied instead of static.
So instead of bidding into 3 groups, there's now a linear formula that applies. So based on the number of trips that are generated, there's a dollar value that scales linearly per trip that gets generated, as opposed to being binned into 3 buckets and having a fixed dollar amount assigned to each bucket.
You know why that change was made since Chris presented it?
It's-
And maybe Chris is on the line, he can answer.
It's linear. We actually discussed this at the recent multimodal transportation board, and this was
It was contentious. It was contentious to not have a formulaic because some areas have basically generate more transportation trips than others. And higher transit areas could be foreseen as not giving into their fair share, not paying their fair share
also,
during development.
the bins were pretty wide. Like a development that generates 6 trips, six peak trips per day, and a project that generates 59 peak trips per day they're 2 very different developments.
So like, do we know how this formula, the results of this formula would compare to the numbers that Chris presented last meeting? Like, we're looking at similar amount of
The higher
development
amount would
fee?
be, the higher amount of trips would be a much higher fee. The lower amount of trips is about equal to what? Which was,
Yeah, if you take in the 3 bins, if you take the lower trip number for the bin, that's about what you get with your equation. So if you generate it, so under the bin model, or the 3 bins model, if you generated, I think it was 6 trips, you'd pay about the same, you pay a little bit less under the scaling model versus the bin.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the middle round range was just the cost of one intersection improvement. Whereas this formula will better align multi-intersection improvements. Intersection rather than just one crosswalk or just one ADA ramp, be able to get more done per intersection.
But is there like a cap on it at all?
Yes. Wait a second, because it said in this.
I think, obviously, Chris can speak up if I'm wildly off base on this one, but part of the reason why they binned the numbers was because like installing a crosswalk at an intersection, like there's a fixed cost. You can't install half a crosswalk. I mean, I guess you could install one side of a crosswalk, but it's not very useful. You install a crosswalk, you need to put curb cuts on both sides. You gotta, stripe the whole thing. You gotta put curbs in, make sure there's landings and, approaches on both sides. You gotta put, you have to install pedestrian lights on both sides. And so like, there's sort of a minimum cost to install all that stuff. And so the idea behind the bidding was one crosswalk, was basically, it was scaled to an integer number of crosswalks.
There is a dollar cap proportional to the peak hour trips and index using the engineering news record construction cost index, which comes from the Baltimore region as reported in the engineering news record. So that will scale financially amongst other pieces. So there is a cap, but that cap is not as fixed as potentially explained to us.
Are we in discussion?
Well, we're not formally, because we could call for discussion after.
Call for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, well, we haven't made the motion and seconded it yet, so let's do.
Someone should say.
I have a question though.
You did.
The motion was
No, we
made.
didn't.
The motion was
Yeah, you
made
did
by
make the
Sam.
motion.
Oh, my mistake, okay.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned the ENR.
Yes.
Is that the cap? Is the cap their construction cost rate in the Baltimore region annually would be a cap in these fees or on the increase in these fees?
It's proportional based. Yeah, it could be on the increase of those fees.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris would probably be the better way to answer that.
That measure is used in other places in the
Correct.
county, so I just wanted to understand it.
Yeah, I've heard with
Yes.
this.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, Chris.
Thanks. So yeah, the cap itself is formula based, and the cap can then be the formula can be increased using that index that was mentioned. If that makes sense.
It's two pieces. There's a formula to calculate the cap, and then every year the cap gets raised by the engineering, an indexed cost of engineering.
Correct.
We don't index to CPI because the cost of construction of public works projects has exceeded CPI for decades. And so if you're going to index to something, you index to a specific, to the ENR instead of CPI. It's a specific inflation index.
So
You should use the one from higher education. You
just so I'm clear, this gets added to the work that a project engineer has to do prior to subdivision, or prior to submission, I should say. It has to be included in the submission for a project, just as the roads and intersection issues need to be explored and addressed in your application. This would also have to be addressed.
This is the pedestrian crossing, so this is the
Yes.
intersections. Previously, there was just auto traffic
Correct.
roads,
Right.
so they would also be included
So-
with pedestrian traffic.
So, I mean, it's a bit of a misnomer to call it a test because the roads test isn't a test either. Now we've just renamed it, but it's just something that we're now saying has to be included in the engineering of your project when you submit for review, correct?
Correct.
Does it actually say review or assumed?
It does not say review.
Lisa, can you reread the motion and did we ever get a second on it or?
Yes, we did, in a second.
We did, okay.
The motion was, move to adopt pedestrian crossings and ATFO intersections test to the ATFO multimodal transportation test as outlined in the 4/25/25 proposed ATFO multimodal transportation tests memo. And who seconded that previous motion? I'm
I
sorry.
didn't hear a second.
I did not hear a second either.
I didn't hear a second either, but I'll second it, so there you go.
seconded the last motion.
Antoine did? Okay, thank you.
And one other point of clarification for me, that if you're talking about a project that's a six, that adds 6 trips, peak hour trips. Does even a small subdivision like that get triggered and it's only an integer? So if it's 6 or it's 19, it's gonna be 1 that they have to pay for? Or is it like sidewalks where you have to pay into, if you're less than paying for a full intersection or full crossing, do you just make a contribution of your share? Or how is that anticipated?
I mean, it's my understanding from reading the memo that if the cost of a single crosswalk is higher than the cap, the developer would probably just want to pay the fee in lieu of, rather, I mean, if you want to be nice and pay for a whole crosswalk, I don't think the county will get mad at you.
No, but obviously, but the question is, are they gonna have responsibility to do a whole crossing, even if they're only adding 6 trips?
No,
Okay,
no, it would be one.
it's scaled.
Yeah, it's scaled linearly, and if it's under the cap, you can't be forced to install a crosswalk.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the cap is the cap. So if the cap amount for a small, let's say 6 trip development is, let's say that generated $10,000 cap, and that's not enough to make any crossing improvements at intersection, then $10,000 is the cap, and that could be paid as a fee in lieu then, $10,000.
And it gets paid into a crossing fund, like a sidewalk gets paid into a sidewalk fund.
Yes, but we would tag it to the area so that those funds were used in that local area
Okay,
for a
Did you
crossing
say-
improvement.
Would be a cap of an increase or would be the increase?
The ENR ENR is like an economic index.
No, I know, but I know what that would automatically be, that number for each year, whatever the ENR was,
Yes,
not some separate decision that's capped by.
correct.
It's just automatically, thank you.
Quick question, there's two references in here. I'll start with the formulaic one. There's one formula in there, and pardon me, my eyesight, I can't see it on the screen.
I turned it off.
It
You can't see it.
one variable to be determined at a later date.
Yes.
Enlighten me, help allay my concern of a random variable that would be solved sometime in the future, which could be any.
A random variable that could be solved in the future.
Crystal?
It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 paragraph.
Yeah.
That is captured.
I can respond to the question. So there is a variable f that is yet to be determined, the multiplication factor that multiplies the peak hour trips to come up with the dollar cap. That's going to need some more work. I see that happening more, through the council process. We're willing to get some consulting support to help, come up with that logical number. So, I don't think anybody has that number yet to know what those caps should be. So it's going to need some more work and some consulting support. I will say the examples that I provided, when I presented a couple meetings ago, I did some examples for illustrative purposes and just to show how it might work. Those are probably on the lower end because that was mostly set up to provide a crossing at the medium level for one leg. So, whatever that factor F ends up being, it probably should be enough that a medium-sized development is going to provide some useful crossing improvement at an intersection. But work definitely needs to be done on the consulting side to come up with that correct factor.
And there's one other component in this. I think the motion referenced a memo as opposed to the text motion. That's, how can I say, nested? You would actually have to have the memo.
Yeah, the memo is 2 pages, just hard to read out as a.
When you're reading APFO code, shouldn't have to sub-reference, especially documents like that. They aren't like the road manual or something.
So
So
what
this
we'll
is just for
have,
recommendation.
yeah,
EPFO itself would have this transcript.
So.
and we'll put that for the, oh, sorry.
But I'm gonna make a motion, I'm expecting one a second, but to withhold the cap until F is calculated, so we know the actual results. Saying a second. What do we call withhold the cap in the language of the motion until F is calculated, so that we know the actual results of what we're proposing.
But I think, isn't Chris,
In the motion.
It's the yellow, he's saying, take out the first yellowed line
Basically,
that's on the screen.
and not meant to throw roadblocks, it's meant to ensure that we know what our variables are.
but isn't that what Chris is saying? We need to engage some consultant on the board so how do we can't get there because we don't have the capacity as a committee to engage that consulting support.
Would it be done in a reasonable timeframe?
Well,
Our committee.
The committee we don't have resources.
Well, since this is a recommendation that the council send a bill, you're basically just saying there'll be a cap. And analyze what that should be.
Yeah. This seems like it's enough.
Yeah.
I plan to attend the county council meeting where this will be discussed.
So, I think it's okay.
It doesn't matter right now.
Anyone want to say-
There's no
anyone-
second.
I hear what you're saying. I hear why you're saying take it out.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think it probably would be needed to be kept for the same reasons for taking it out. That makes sense. I hear both sides of that.
I'm just looking for a surety and. not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
for
yeah,
this,
yeah, no, yeah,
for
yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
And I don't hear seconds.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote. So much for 5 minutes here. Here's one.
Almost. 6 minutes.
All right, Mr. Right. Let's request Mr. Arterburn,
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Casagrande,
Yes.
Mr. Domu,
Yes.
Mr. Glykoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Lovelace,
I expressed my concerns there, but overall greatly in support.
Ms. Mallow,
Yes.
Ms. Markovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Scher,
Yes.
Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Right, motion carries 11-0. All right, last one, folks.
I move to adopt ADA access to existing nearby bus stops test to the APFO multimodal transportation test as outlined in the April 2025 proposed APFO multimodal transportation tests memo. And the contents of this test from the memo is basically identical to what we discussed during the meeting.
I second.
I'll give
As
you
a
a
quick-
second.
As a quick highlight, just for a quick review, the developers have to check the quarter mile around their property to see if there are any RTA bus stops. If they do, then then the developer needs to review them for ADA compliance. And ADA compliance includes a minimum 5 by 8 foot deep concrete pad adjacent to the road, that's curb tight, and a 5 foot minimum sidewalk with curb and gutter from the bus stop to the nearest intersection. And then ADA ramps at the nearest intersection.
Well, is there any cap? I mean, the nearest intersection could be a half mile away. We
Quarter
saw
mile.
some of
No,
those
no, no, no.
rural-
With a quarter mile.
Quarter mile
No, but it's
80.
within a quarter mile of the project.
of the quarter mile of the development frontage, which might be, well, within a quarter mile of development frontage. So wherever that frontage space is, wherever that frontage ends, quarter mile.
But what I heard him say though,
No, you're saying if the bus stop is like directly in front of the property, but the nearest intersection's half a mile away,
correct,
would you need to build half a mile linear,
correct.
for sidewalk? I don't think we
Chris, can
have
you?
any bus stops that are like that.
You can ask.
Well, we saw some
It could be any,
Yeah.
bus stops on
it-
the.
it's in any direction, so, and then it's not, it doesn't just include major intersections, it's intersection with any other street. So there's gonna be a driveway or a side street within a reasonable distance in one direction or the other.
That's pretty open to me.
So let me offer another thought. If it's a quarter of a mile from a development, common sense to me says there's gonna be an intersection at the development. So you probably,
Driveway, a driveway, but not necessarily an intersection.
if it's a single home, okay.
This, even though.
The develops.
I mean, single homes won't apply for this test,
Yeah.
so the development will have to be five or more peak trips. And yes, the bus stop will have to be within a quarter mile of that development and that development's intersecting road.
But again, if it's a flag lot subdivision and it's a 5 lot subdivision and they're generating 5 trips,
It's 5 trips per hour.
okay, I mean, so I don't know how big a subdivision needs to be to generate 5 trips per hour. But I guess my point is that if it's a flag lot subdivision, there's no intersection. It could be a mile to the next intersection. You don't know if it's a flag lot subdivision. Because it's not a road.
RTA stop. I think RTA
Yeah.
most RTA stops are located near intersections specifically for like mobility reasons.
Most are.
Most of them are.
Most are, because this wouldn't be a new stop. These are,
These are
Existing.
existing.
I understand, yeah.
One way to address this, because I think we're all trying to get it to the development itself to count in terms of, where they would go to, is to add to the second bullet there. The end of the second bullet, just add or to the development frontage.
Yeah, that would cap your sidewalk at a quarter mile.
So to the lesser of.
Because I understand the concern that maybe this, a longer stretch could pop up somewhere, but that would mean that the furthest they would have to go would be to the development frontage, which can only be a quarter mile away.
Are you saying something like that, Chris?
Let me see if I can see it.
Or to the
Yep.
entrance. Well, I don't know what,
Or
left
to
of
the-
the nearest intersection, or
yes.
the
To the
development.
lesser of would go before to
Yeah, or to the development frontage, whichever is lesser.
That way. In no
Yeah.
case you could sidewalk more than a quarter.
Yeah.
mile.
Okay.
More sense.
I think.
That's a good,
Most.
that's a good, that's a good.
Or to the, I'm sorry, say that again.
Or to the development frontage, whichever is.
To the lesser of, yeah,
Or to
At the
the
end.
the lesser distance.
lesser distance.
It's, splitting hairs when the developer provides mitigation. You want to specify what kind of mitigation. You could throw some gravel down and that's mitigation. You
No,
want to go to these standards.
no, it's to the ADA compliance includes these three. It must be,
Well,
Well,
any,
it shows
any
it's-
construction within the county right of way has to meet the county's roadway design manual. And the roadway design manual is not allowed.
I'm just saying it could be a little more prescriptive. I would be looking for what he's out.
Okay. You could mention the roadway design manual, the roadway
So
design.
then it's
In accordance with our community
Two.
design manual.
the nearest intersection or to distance of development frontage, whichever is less.
Of the development frontage.
Distance of the.
Just renaming.
Chris, are you also going to change your memo? Just so we have a revised memo to refer to.
I will, yeah, I'll change it to
Okay, thank
your
you.
the exact
Okay.
language that you're putting in the motion, yeah.
Okay. Okay,
So I'm just trying to understand again, Phil. So if this is an open section road, now we're not building a sidewalk with curb and gutter, right?
If there's a bus stop, if there's an RTA bus stop and the road does not have a sidewalk, the developer would be expected to build, I guess in this case, up to a quarter mile.
No, that I understand. The question is, what's the sidewalk standard? If it's an open section road with no curb and gutter,
Oh, it would need to build curb and gutter as well.
so you're gonna build a quarter mile curb and gutter sidewalk on an open section road?
Actually, no, it doesn't.
no,
mention-
no,
it
not for
does not
this,
mention
not
curb
for
and
the second one. It's not curb and gutter. It's
No,
just the bus.
gutter. It's just the bus stop and just the sidewalk.
It's just the pad.
Yep.
Bus stop, improvements to.
But-
make it ADA
Right,
accessible.
but there's sidewalk and then there's curb and gutter and sidewalk.
Mhm.
So the question is,
No, actually, no,
if it's an open section road with no curb and gutter, it's just an open section road.
But
Is
if
the-
it's just, if it's just an open section road at an existing bus stop.
Yep.
Will they be responsible for sidewalk curb and gutter?
Because
Yeah.
the photograph that Chris showed
Yeah,
was
memo
that
says they do.
situation.
They
There's
would
no
be.
point in making it ADA accessible if there's no sidewalk.
Right.
Either way.
No, there's still sidewalk. The question is not whether there's sidewalk. It's whether you're building the whole profile of a curb and gutter and sidewalk.
Yeah,
as
curb-
opposed to just a.
Yeah, curb is,
sidewalk.
doing curbs requires a drainage study, which can sometimes be expensive. Right, well, it is expensive.
Right.
It's additional.
So the idea is for the sidewalk to be of the same standard as it would be for a frontage sidewalk of the development, which, typically developments are required to build sidewalk on their existing frontage road. So, we do require that with curb and gutter, even if it's a open section road.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The design manual
Right.
in most cases would require you install curb and gutter anyway. You're doing
Okay, so it's an
I mean,
additional
but-
cost.
Some of it will come through the development review process anyway, and be part of their design manual
Yeah.
regardless, as part of Complete Streets.
Correct.
Right, so this is just,
This is the additional, curb and gutter piece here would be an
Correct.
additional cost that's already required.
right,
Except you're only doing it because you're doing this.
well, a lot of it would come
Other way
through, I think you would have a lot of it done through Complete Streets anyway.
around. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
You would have a lot of it done anyway, but
No, but
The test,
But I go back to, the only thing that's driving the addition of this sidewalk is the existence of the bus stop. If there's no bus stop,
this, and.
there's not
this-
necessarily any
If this, no,
requirement.
no, if there's no bus stop, this test wouldn't be
Yeah.
applicable.
I understand. The question is now, are we now mandating the construction of curb and gutter and sidewalk because there's a bus stop there that would otherwise not have to be built? It's only the existence of the bus stop that's mandating the construction of the curb and gutter
Correct.
for that quarter mile.
Yes.
So it is an incremental cost. It's not, because it's not something you
Yes.
would do if there was no bus stop.
That's the principle. of
Yes.
Complete
Yeah.
Streets. It's
Yes.
the notion of giving people accessibility,
Mhm.
making that bus stop accessible, whether it's to the development or furthering accessibility. So it's an additional cost.
But there's still.
That's the
cap, right? There's
principle.
still a
Right.
cap.
No,
Of
the
a quarter mile.
test, well, there's a distance cap, it's not a dollar cap.
Distance
Right.
cap, okay.
But 1,250 square feet or linear feet of
Mhm.
curb and gutter sidewalk is a huge cost
Yeah.
for a 2 or 3 or 4 lot
Hmm.
subdivision.
So you're saying.
but
cap
we're
is-
also talking generating 5 or less peak hour trips. I doubt that would,
More, 5 or more.
Yeah, 5 or more.
5 or more
Per hour, right?
per hour.
It would be 10 or more houses.
So I don't think that
Should be-
size of a neighborhood would be generating that.
Yeah, that's a
It's a pretty
that's a
sizable
decent
development.
sized,
What, I'm sorry,
That'd probably
it's a
be
decent sized development.
That would trigger
Probably
this.
5 or more trips.
Five
Yeah,
or more
that,
trips.
that would trigger that.
Yeah.
10 houses, 20 houses, we're talking.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been 10.
10,
it's
20 houses.
10 houses.
Anything else? Anybody?
That was a good question.
Call for the vote?
I'm actually curious how many RTA bus stops we have that are more than a quarter mile from intersection.
Not many. They're typically placed near intersections for other reasons, so that, people have opportunities to cross the road at the nearest intersection as well, between bus stops.
I can't hear anymore, the sound.
We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
She's not muted.
Laura, can you hear us?
Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Huh, I don't know, that's weird.
Your speakers broke.
Laura, can you hear us? We haven't changed any of our settings here.
Can you chat with her and tell her that? No, I'm back.
Yes, log out.
She hasn't missed it.
Lisa, can you chat with her and let her know that we can hear her?
I'm texting right now.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call for we called for the vote. I'm gonna go ahead and do the roll call now. And, Antoine, did you second that again? I heard Laura to come in after, okay. He said Laura beat you, okay. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead, Mr. Arterburn,
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Casagrande,
Yes.
Mr. Domu,
Yes.
Mr. Blackoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
And
I'll come back to her. Mr. Lovelace,
Yes.
Ms. Mallow,
Yes.
Ms. Markovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Scherer,
Yes.
and Mr. Wright.
Yes.
so
Okay.
You try to get a vote by Karen.
It's so weird.
Yeah,
Everything on this end seems fine.
Laura, did you check?
I sent her, but
She says it just cut out.
That's so, Chris, can you still hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Huh, that's so weird. Okay.
Coming out and come back in.
I did tell her to jump out and jump back in.
Okay, well, that was our last, I mean,
for multimodal.
yeah. Do we want to count her vote? It passes without it. Obviously.
Oh, well,
You can get it in retrospect. I mean,
Okay.
Chris, Phil, Antoine, thank you for your work on this.
we still have 10 minutes, and I think at least let's get the conversation started on affordable housing and how that might relate to the UPP system that we have in place. There's no specific agenda, there's no specific motion. The question is, at this point, what's the sense of the committee? Do we want affordable housing to be subject to the same premium, UPP payment, but also the same school surcharge? I'll start the conversation just by saying that those projects will now also directly benefit from the time delay reduction associated with the UPP system, just as market rate projects do. So I'm wondering if perhaps they should still be subject to the school surcharge and UPP. But I'll just throw that out there. I'm not sure.
I do think the pay school surcharge rate is lower.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that is.
Perhaps the UPP applies to the lower rate, but there's still a UPP because now they're not an APFO hold the full year.
Right.
Could we return to what the Affordable Housing Committee recommended? And pull that up since they presented to us and see kind of what their recommendations were and how it aligns with this new model.
The new model, yeah.
Yes.
Is that something you can pull up?
Could we also, while you're looking for that, another data request is what the school surcharge fee is?
I'm trying to find that
Affordable
now.
housing.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that. If I can- There's a chart that the building department has.
It varies quite a bit. There's some areas where it's completely exempt, some where it's partially, somewhere it's rarely, not at all.
And the weight is waived, and it's for council hearing first.
Oh, here it is. I can share it if people want to see it.
Yeah.
Are you have the same thing up?
I was gonna turn on the variation of the school surcharge if it's affordable.
Oh, you have my thing up. Okay. Okay. Where do you want to start? Do you want to see the working group recommendations or do you want to see the school surcharge? Where's the best? Where do you want to start?
Jen had asked for the working group, so let's do that.
Okay, well, here's the working group recommendations. So here we go. let's start with me reorient myself here. Okay. So it would only apply to the affordable so there's two things. So even when you have an affordable housing project, all units would have to go through. So they would have to be exempt from whatever the APA was. You just can't have the market rate be separate from the affordable because the plans go through at the same time, right? So that would be one of the considerations. So maybe what you could do is have the market rate pay the premium payments, but have the affordable units be exempt from the premium payment, if that's one of the considerations, but at least they go through the project at the same time. So that could be one consideration, absolve them from all payment structures. And then they all the affordable pull from the column, because that's also the second prong to our APFO test. So not only do you have to pass the school capacity test, but you also have to do the allocation chart as well. So we have different, remember, columns for allocation that we divvy up. So this is for the affordable housing column for purchase and for rental housing. So I think that's one of the discussion points. So, so one thing to put in discussion can be projects have to go through at the same time because projects, we don't differentiate the market rate from the affordable units. They're kind of commingled in the SDP world. So when that happens, the project has to go through all at one time, but maybe the affordable units don't pay the premium payment, but the market rate ones do in that same project, but the project's processed at the same time.
So in regards to funding, this whole we're in the mindset of delays.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have gateways to get through, of which one is the school test and one is the allocations, which hasn't been a factor for years.
Right.
But could be if it were a site.
It should be.
But to your point of they can't go at different times, I think it would be a moot point under the auspices doing the UPP because you've effectively eliminated the entire school.
As far as timing goes, but instead of charging the affordable units, would then the discussion be to not charge the affordable units, utilization premium payment, only apply the utilization premium payment to the market rate within that?
So to that point, obviously it would be beneficial for the schools if they could capture the market rate component instead of having that glommed onto the thing for mixed projects. But this is something I've been preaching for a long time, which is all this solving for X. There is a net amount of school capacity that needs to be generated from these various things. Each and every exemption that is granted either is eaten by the school system as a loss of revenue or has to be offset into everything else. What we just did was kind of an arbitrary amount for the UPP rather than solving, so we could determine the offset. But the question is, do we or do we not offset losses from exemptions?
So,
It is
yeah,
pretty low.
help me with this. Right now, the affordable unit side of a mixed project
Mhm.
still pays a school surcharge, but it pays it at a reduced rate.
Right, it's 272 compared to 815.
And only on the affordable, only on the.
Only on,
On the
non-market.
affordable
only on
units.
the on-site MIHUs located.
Do you want to put yours up now?
So it would seem, I'm kind of aligned with you, Brent, on this. Even though it's at a lower rate, I don't know why the UPP would not apply. It seems to me that it can still apply, but it applies to a lower base rate. That right now is 2 something rather than 8 something.
Yeah. Right, so the question is this, you can apply the UPP to that
To that,
or not?
You're applying 15 or 18% or whatever it is to a much lower number than
It's a lower.
just comes out to,
it's a lower
$100
number, but
a lot less.
they're still in the game, they're still contributing, because otherwise they're free riding
the reduction in time associated with the market rate side of the equation, and they pay nothing. They don't contribute at all for it. They're just getting the benefit without any contribution at all. My feeling is that they should participate in the UPP on that lower per square foot charge. But that's what's.
So the downside to that, not participating, would be less revenue for the schools. And what are the other downsides? I mean, that's a big downside, but I'm just trying to see if there's any others.
I think from a committee standpoint, I know that people who voted for the UTP motion, who had grave concerns about the eliminated rate, said that they like the idea of when there are projects in high impact areas, we may as well get some money because we're not getting mitigation with it. And I know that, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I know that there are people who said when we were voting on this motion, that the reason they were voting was because there were a lot of exemptions that crowded their school. And that they were voting yes because they wanted more money to be helpful to mitigation. And that made them willing to eliminate. I didn't vote that because I was worried about 0.8, but I just remember hearing that.
I think kind of the whole point and objective in going to the UPP model is that we're recognizing that the schools struggle with dealing with capacity issues or overcapacity issues, whether it's 4 years out or 1 year out. It doesn't matter. The struggle is the same. And if we're freeing up that time, then I can tell you, as having developed some, well, we did low income housing tax credit projects, so a little different, but that wait period associated with the APFO, as it applies now, getting rid of it is still valuable. It's valuable for affordable, just like it's valuable for market rate. So it seems to me like they should participate.
And the other nice thing is like, there's no waiver process that they'd have to go through anymore to get out of the fact that a school could be in a closed area. Right? The council doesn't have to hear it. They don't have to go through that lengthy, uncertain process.
Like they're doing with the, what is it, the Savage TOD now, right? That's being, anyway,
So what I'm hearing as consensus here is that there's a lot of folks who think that, yes, they should be subject to it.
And that's why they have a low
But I
rate.
mean, someone was saying that,
Yeah.
I would say it's the lesser of evils, but obviously. Not one.
so anybody that would make a motion, I've been told I shouldn't be making a motion.
I'll make the motion. I think if you do the math, it's a third
Oh, the 272 is a third of what the.
of 815.
Okay.
So the motion would be that the,
It's just applied to whatever the.
Affordable housing is a 1/3 or 2/3 discount rate? Or
Well,
Essentially,
you don't even have to do it.
No, you just apply the UPP model to the affordable housing and the affordable housing column
it's already.
on the base surcharge rate.
Oh, because the rate's already.
We already have it. It's already done.
Okay.
So you would apply the UPP model to to affordable housing and the affordable housing column on the base surcharge rate.
Yes.
And I'll second it.
Who made the motion? I'm sorry. Okay. Any other discussion? I know Linda's gonna
And
write it down
Jen-
quick, but-
okay.
Jen seconded.
Yeah, I was already kind of like, okay, I know where you guys were going. All right, very good. All right. Mr. Arterburn?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Casagrande?
Yes.
Mr. Domu?
Yes.
Mr. Glykoff?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Yes,
can barely hear you now.
Mr. Lovelace?
No, because of intentional overcrowding. I understand your logic.
Ms. Mallow,
Yes.
Ms. Markovitz,
Yes.
Mr. Scher,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
and the motion passes 10 to 1. We got a lot accomplished tonight, folks. Good job.
We do still have one more row on that, and that is senior housing. And the same vote, the same consideration for senior housing.
I thought we were just voting that we'd apply whatever the numbers in this table are to the UPP. I guess we were only talking about.
We're only talking about affordable.
What do you mean from senior
Right
housing?
there. So senior housing actually is,
Senior housing pays 132,
Oh,
but they're still subject to APFO holds.
Return to the limit.
They're in an APFO hold area, right?
well, for allocations, but not for.
not for,
They're
not for
they're not
school.
subject to
Wait on the
schools.
school test.
Oh, those.
No,
Those
no,
schools
no.
have because they're not, they don't do schools.
They got no kids.
Yeah. But they still pay schools.
They do in the villages.
They still pay the school surcharge.
We're not the villages. Wow, folks, this was
Okay.
great.
Wait, so what you're saying, you want to make a motion that even senior housing?
No, because
No, we don't.
they don't get any time benefit because they're not subject
Yeah,
to the
right.
school test at all.
And there's also no kids generated in senior housing.
I understand.
Well,
That's why it's so low.
you know, the thing is,
Paying this
the
$1.
thing is, though, I'm working at cross purposes with myself in the sense that 70% of the houses in Howard County don't send any kids to the schools, but they're all subject to this. Why are they not, just because they're older? I mean, I qualify, so, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Policy.
I would make a motion that like the senior housing also, even though it's the base is 132 a square foot, you still apply the UPC premium to it. It's,
Because of the more money.
10-year-old that would be filmed outside. Is there a second? I mean, we can vote it. It'll take one, well, less than Antoine's time.
But you want to do what?
Apply to
Include
senior
senior housing.
There was made a motion to include
Senior housing.
the UPP to the senior housing.
Jeff made a motion, I'll second.
Discussion.
Let's put it away.
I think this is a little more complicated than looking at 1135. Fundamentally, the amount of overcrowding in the school system, ironically, from my fighting against it, it's supposed to be not affecting units. Why? So
Right.
associated.
You can't.
It's not,
Contradiction.
it's not an excess.
Contradiction.
There's not a, yeah.
why do they charge the school surcharge fee to begin
And
with?
that is not an excess as well, but that falls under the category of, are we offsetting expenses when we add exemptions? It's the system.
Some people have argued that
You know what?
when you have senior housing, you have people who move to it and then they sell their house to people with
I
kids.
think
And
that
so,
makes a lot of logical sense to me.
yeah, I'm just saying that I think that's why eventually there was. Somebody said, well, why is there a fee at all? And I said, I'm just saying because there's that argument.
One of the things, so any discussion, and I'll say yes for me, but anybody else? So,
I need to throw out one other high level, because they're just across the room. What percentage of our income goes to schools? If you're a retired person, you're paying property tax, and income tax. Some 58, 54, some declining amount goes to the school systems, whether or not you're using it. You're part of the society, and that's what we need to basis. So there's arguments both ways.
I mean, single people with no kids pay the higher tax. You know, pay their taxes as well.
They're also getting the benefit of a community that
Values
Is-
education.
values education and is somewhere where people still want to live and move here.
And have their houses appreciated.
And
Right.
the other issue that's come up in spending affordability for a couple of years now is that we're creating a system that prioritizes the usage of our scarce land to develop housing for seniors and retired people Whereas we have a scarce supply of land and we should be looking at prioritizing development for working age professionals that are going to be long-term and contributing taxpayers in the system as opposed to carving out vast areas of senior housing land that we can't then use for workforce housing. I think it's a fair criticism, but I'm thinking back through this and wondering, is the answer applying a UPP that takes it from $1.30 to $1.50? I mean, who really cares? It's not the issue. Really, the issue is $1.32 the right number?
But let's not go there.
That's the whole impact fee concept, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I think if, to the extent that there's $1.32 charge, then you should apply the UPP, just like you'd apply to every other
Everybody
single
else.
category. So you want to have an exemption for that one category, and I don't know if I agree with that.
So we can pass it and still recommend that the council revisit the base rate of $1.32. That's independent of whether or not the UPP applies.
Because the concept that we said initially, Todd, was the point of UPP is to allow projects to move forward and no longer be on hold.
Correct.
But senior units are on hold anyways, so that connection doesn't, yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. So we call for the vote.
I'll call for vote.
All right, can we just make sure I have the motion correct, if you don't mind if I restate the motion? Apply the UPP model to senior housing.
Yeah, I would just take the exact same motion from the prior one and replace affordable.
That's correct.
So we're referring to this CD, whatever.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Arterburn?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Casagrande, he is absent. Did he leave?
Yes.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Mr. Domo?
Yes.
Mr. Glykoff?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones, I should say. Mr. Lovelace?
No rational nexus, no.
Ms. Mallow?
Yes.
Ms. Markovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Scherer?
Abstain.
Mr. Wright?
Abstaining.
Still in a quorum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do. For the being
So six out of 10 passes then.
Six makes it four.
So 7 to 1.
What?
Because there's abstentions.
Oh, right.
But we still have 10, which is a quorum.
Right.
So
Actually, it's 7-1-2.
7-1, oh, yeah, I wasn't counting the abstentions. Okay. All right, so the motion passes.
all right, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, yes.
Yes.
See you next Wednesday.
Yeah, so our meeting is next Wednesday and we will, go over the presentation.
Yes.
Here again? Here again?
Yes.
So, maybe at our next meeting, we can look at how much time we have left. See if we can